Do you know what makes a lie effective? The best lie has to have an element of truth. It has to have something that connect the deceiver to those that he's trying to deceive. So the way that you'll see the most effective and most widespread lies is they'll have this piece of something that everyone can relate to, and then they'll branch off and kind of twist you. And it's where we get the idea of like sleight of hand, you know, keeping you from seeing what's directly in front of you, the facts that would otherwise be self evident or obvious. And I'm going to read you a quote by Joseph, I believe it's Goebbels, and many of you've probably heard it or something akin to it. But it says, if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such a time as the state can shield the people from the political, economic, and or military consequences of the lie when the fruit of the deceit comes to manifest. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its powers to repress dissent, opposition, for the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus, by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state. So the lie can be maintained until harvest comes, basically. And what we are seeing today is this mantra utilized more effectively than ever before. Christians are not called to be naive, but contrary, we are called to be wise, discerning, able to process data and come to a logical, reasonable, rational conclusion of what truth is and what it is not. So, for instance, if you were to want to strike fear into a large number of people, and say you wanted to use a virus or a proposed pandemic to where you paint this apocalyptic, world ending condition, what you would need to do is take something that is real to some degree, connect people in that thought, and then build the lie on top of that. For instance, saying that a cold, which people relate, they do see a cold or virus in our midst. That's not being denied that there is an actual cold going around. You know, when the flu comes around, people don't deny that the flu is here or a rotavirus or whatever it may be. But then they start to build upon the fact that some people are getting sick, and then they magnify and exaggerate greatly what a person's concern should be. So, you know, God tells us, Jesus in Matthew 10:16, behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So picture you as a sheep going through a herd of wolves that want to devour you. So realizing the real condition of your situation is that you as a Christian live in a world full of wolves. Wolves impulsively and instinctively want to consume, devour, harm, and destroy sheep. So understanding where you are and that this world is not some Hollywood fantasy that we live in. It is full of wicked, greedy people, many of which would love nothing more than to manipulate, destroy, and bring to ruin everything that is you. Now, knowing the backdrop of where you actually are, you would not want to take the word of every wolf in regard to what truth is or what is best for you. Yet culturally, they have created a circumstance by which people's dependence upon these very wolves is at an all-time high, at least in modern times. It's where they look for their health, their wealth, their interpretation of reality, their interpretation of history, their interpretation of potential future. It's ironic that we have become so gullible as a culture that we reject intuition. We reject what we see with our very eyes. We reject clear logic. We reject clear math to side with those who ultimately would just want to consume you until you're gone and then replace you with a new one. It shows where our faith as a culture has shifted from God, truth, objective reality, reason, to digital input, thinking ourselves too ignorant to even know what is healthy for us. For instance, put your hands over your nose and your mouth, compress them, which is what everybody looks like right now. What you are doing is you're breathing in the CO2 that God designed your body to expel, that plants, we know that plants and such actually consume what we expel and return oxygen to us. That struggle you have breathing, that increased heart rate where your body is having to pump harder to increase your breath rate so that it can get what would normally be easy oxygen to obtain, intuitively is foolish to put yourself in that situation, especially with such a low risk of potential death, harm, dismemberment from this current virus. Right now, nationally, if you take their numbers, which are padded, many doctors have admitted they are padded, we're at around 100,000. And that puts the U.S. population at a scary rate by which you are at a 0.03% chance of maybe dying from this virus. 0.03 of 1%. 1/100th or 3/100ths of 1%. That's low. That is extraordinarily low risk to put yourself at such risk that you cannot breathe, you cannot function, you're increasing the risk of hypoxia, intuitively you would know that would be a bad idea. If you watch kids when they're wrestling and one gets a hold of one's neck or covers their mouth where they can't get their breath, panic ensues. Instinctively, you know you need oxygen, so you begin to panic. Intuitively, anything that you would do to restrict that flow is not good for your health. But a world of people are covering their face, restricting their breathing is all that they're doing. In no way preventing viral or bacteria from being spread. But they're doing it anyway because they are fighting against even their instincts because a source outside of themselves told them to do so. Though it is extremely harmful and foolish to do so. And instead of speaking up and saying, hey, that is dumb, that is stupid, that is foolish, I can't breathe, we're just going along with it. Because people don't even trust their own body to know that this is bad. So when you train a culture to think a certain way, they can and will, and as we see, do reject the most obvious truth simply by brain training a person to think a certain way. I would like to share with you what is a much, much greater risk to your potential health, according not to Christian sources, but according to a very secular and surprisingly open John Hopkins. Now, here's how they take a little bit, well, this is just how they manipulate facts. Okay, you have one source that clearly will tell you that you are anywhere between 2.5 to 4.4 times greater at risk of your doctor killing you than you are of the coronavirus killing you while we're at 100,000. All right, I'm going to read you the headlines. This is put out by CNBC, and it's quoting a John Hopkins study. The article was February 22nd, 2018, and it says, a recent John Hopkins study claims more than 250,000 people in the U.S., this is just the U.S., die every year from medical errors. That would be negligence, mistakes. Other reports claim the numbers to be as high as 440,000, and that would be people that die every year from medical errors. Properly phrased, it should be that are killed by their physicians, is really exactly what it's saying. It goes on to say that medical errors are, this is a matter-of-fact statement, medical errors are the third leading cause of death after heart disease and cancer. And I'll try to remember to put the link in the description box that you can read this article in its entirety, for yourself, to see examples of people that the same group of people that are telling you to scream and panic and run from a virus that has a 0.03% chance of killing you. The same doctors are telling you to cover your face and reduce your oxygen flow to your brain, body, heart, and blood cells. The same doctors are the ones that kill anywhere between 250,000 to almost 500,000, depending on the study. Safe number, 250,000 people every year. These are the sources that people are going to try and save them from a virus that has less than 1% chance of fatality. That begs a question. Out of the 100,000 they claim have died from this virus, how many of those are actually in that ballpark of gross negligence, malpractice, medical error, and has nothing to do with these people succumbing to this virus at all, which would reduce the number even more. But yet, this is how they've taken a lie that there is a cold, and they have created mass chaos, mass fear. Billions and trillions of dollars now have been allocated, shifted, borrowed, thrown around. Companies shut down, lives upset, freedoms suspended. And yet they are the very ones who are far more likely to kill you than the virus at even the predicted numbers that they have right now. Now I want to show you how they twist facts to cover this truth up while admitting it, but not openly. If you look on the CDC.com, they have leading causes of death, which matches the Johns Hopkins report. 1, 2, and 3 is where they get a little cloak and dagger. Heart disease, number 1, matches Johns Hopkins. Leading cause of death, cancer, or the second leading cause of death in the U.S., cancer. So heart disease, cancer matches Johns Hopkins. But the CDC doesn't say medical error in the third leading cause. It says accidents, unintentional injuries. And conveniently, their number is far lower than Johns Hopkins. You see, wolves that are wanting to consume sheep oftentimes put on sheep's clothing and a white coat with a little Christianized health logo serpent on a pole, because you got to get into the flock to be effective. If you scream, I'm a wolf, I'm a wolf, I'm a wolf, the sheep will probably run away from you and not literally run to the very ones that are trying to consume them. The Bible shows us much of the root of this. Where is all this craziness coming from? But when you see people like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Fauci, the WHO, who's the who's my question. All these people propagating fear, sowing fear, over and over. What is the root of this? Well, I think it's a lot more simple than we want it to be way more complicated than what it really is. 1 Timothy 6:10 says, for the love of money is the root of all evil. How do you get wealth outside of good method a lot of times? It's simple. You do something corrupt, something wicked. You need power over people, because the people is going to bring to you wealth. More people, more power, more wealth. Control. And that's what we see in this. And this is not new, but they have set the stage to where they have everyone walking around with a cell phone in their hand, a laptop tied to their hip, their nose stuck into a TV box, wanting that wolf to tell them what to do next. We have multi-million-dollar companies giving away data for the past few months to keep people, to ensure you have to have that phone in their hands. You need that daily download. And if you think that they're giving that data to you without the intent of return, you're very naive, in my opinion. These companies do not care about you providing you a service. They care about the revenue, the power, the control that comes out of that service. So they may need to make a small investment to get that return, and they're willing to do so. But modern physicians, by and large, do not go to school because they want to save the world or help people or change the health of people. They go to a school in which they will pay hundreds of thousands of dollars that many can hardly ever pay back in hopes to obtain a lot of money. That's the goal. They take subsidies from pharmacies and big business and companies to advocate for certain medicines, not because they think it's going to cure you, but because there's money to be made. Luke 8:43, and it's nothing new. People have manipulated the fear of death, the fear of bad health, or manipulated those that are sick for human history. Luke 8:43 says that a woman having an issue of blood 12 years, which had spent all of her living upon physicians, neither could be healed of any. Looking to these physicians to cure them, willing to spend everything that she had to try and fix her health, and they could not heal her. But you see, she was willing to spend it anyway, in hopes, faith, trust that they could cure her. Christians are among the masses that run to the doctor over every sniffle, snot, and cold. They're willing to take any experimental drug, whether they can actually pronounce it or not, whether it's been studied to be safe or not, for fear and in trust and in faith and in hope it can fix them, because they are trained to trust the doctors, not to question all things, to prove all things, to use your reason and your wisdom. Just blindly put your trust in these people. We've gotten so far away from natural treatments that though God, you read the Bible, you get into Genesis, God says, you came from dust. You came from the elements of this world. That which is in creation is what God used to form you, to make up you from the cellular level, the smallest point to the largest point. You are made up of things of nature. To repair that, logically, is you would want to put something from nature in to repair and restore that which can be repaired or restored. To let your body take those elements, materials, process it as it needs, because that's within the makeup of your body, patch, repair, regenerate, multiply things that are needed. And if to even suggest that in this day and age, even among believers, you're scoffed at, you're mocked, you're thought of as archaic or naive, because the reason you don't try to weld, here's an example that may help you. The reason you don't try to bond or weld or marry wood to metal is they're made up of completely different components. You take wood and you repair wood. And if you need to patch holes in metal, you do that with metal. With the human body, we come from nature, the nature that God fashioned, the one that He created fruits and vegetables with such like makeup that we can actually eat them, digest them, our bodies can break them down, turn them into something usable, and hence we go on. And now we have a medical group, that which kills is the third leading cause of death in the U.S. Open statement. Out of all the people that die in the U.S., a third leading cause, the third leading reason they die is medical errors. And these are the people that we go to in blind faith. These are the people that we trust with our health. I would think that quite ignorant, all in all, and not be a little more discerning and a little more critical of what they're trying to put in your body, which is completely synthetic. It doesn't repair anything. It will blind, manipulate, shut off the sensors to whatever in your body, though we don't even know what it's going to cause. And now we're so trained to think this way. Somebody can take a virus with such a low risk of death and even propose the idea that we need to quickly, erratically, carelessly throw together a vaccine to treat it. And people think this is a good idea. Now that's foolish. That really is foolish. And Christians just sit and say nothing. People who aren't believers but have good reasoning and logical skills sit and say nothing because they deny their very own mind, instincts that tells them this is reckless, this is careless, this is a bad idea. We see as time goes on how quickly these things can grow exponentially and multiply with but one generation. You see that in the past 50 years, for instance, God has become a topic of taboo in public facilities, schools, workplaces, homes. Babies are slaughtered daily, thousands per day. Fornication, no big deal. Drugs, no big deal. Prostitution, nothing's a big deal anymore except talking about God, reason, and logic. How easy is it going to be when the time comes that those who are trying to mold us into one big religious melting bowl to have the masses support that idea? Mass medication, mass sedation, oppress and discard any dissension to the collective. It's going to be a lot easier than we once thought. They have the framework. They have a culture who cannot get up in the morning and go to the bathroom without picking up their phone. It's the first thing they pick up, the last thing they put down, and something that they freak out if they leave the house without. So it's a lot more easy to picture a small group of people, ultimately one evil person, dictating the culture. In medication, I am wholeheartedly convinced will play a big part in that. Modern medication. Revelation 18:23 says, "And the light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee, and the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee, for thy merchants were the great men of the earth. For by thy sorceries were all nations deceived." For by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. When I first learned this years ago, it was one of those slap in the face kind of reactions to what sorceries entails. You know, you think of like Disney when you're growing up. You got Mickey Mouse with the witch's hat, and he's abracadabra and such. But the word for sorceries there is pharmakia. And I'll read you the open, known and acknowledged definition of pharmakia. It's from the Greek word 5331G 5331. Look it up for yourself. It means medication, pharmacy. That is, by extension, magic, literal or figurative, sorcery and witchcraft. Medication. So, for by the medications, we're all nations deceived. We get pharmakia from its related word, or a related word to pharmakia is pharmakus. It literally means, it comes from the word pharmakon, a drug, that is a spell-given potion. A druggist or a pharmacist. Poisoner, that is by extension a magician. A pharmacist, one that gives drugs. And many of the drugs that they give now are absolutely poison. No doubt about that. We need to be real careful taking medications that put us under a spell. And with the lifestyles, the way that they want you to live, with the rapid jump from this, jump from that, panic, distraction, your brain can't process, you can't sleep because you can't shut the thoughts off. You got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to check this, you got to type that, check it, The urge to find something that will shut you down is great. And that's for people in a non-warring country, a country that's not enduring combat conflict on an open scale. That's in a normal culture, because people insist on living that way. They feel they have to. They have to fit in. They have to. You're just trained to be scared to be different. So we are very willing to take nearly anything. Many of us have went down that road and we've seen damage caused. Some can't be undone. But I foresee a time when mass medication will become almost a given, and it may be certain pills, one or two certain pills. I don't know. When they hone their mixture, maybe just well enough that they can still use you as livestock, but shut you up at the same time. Maybe that'll be that miracle drug, that cure-all that Facebook and CNN and Twitter and YouTube and everybody advocates for, that you take. But we should be greatly concerned with the road and the avenue that doctors have taken. Now, I'm not saying all doctors, because that would be naive as well, because there are Christian doctors, naturalist doctors that are advocating for a different procedure. They are the minority, and they are mocked and they're ridiculed by their peers. But mainstream medicine, the ones that are telling you to panic, be scared, find a corner in your room and cover up your head with a mask, and put you a constant shower of antibacterial spray upon you, and order some bubble wrap on Amazon. Do anything but live free and speak your mind. These are the people that are the danger. Jesus does not want us to be naive, not fearful, and not falling into an endless bucket of rabbit trails, but take what you see through the lens of Scripture, through your intuition, and form a conclusion on what you see. And what we see going on now is dangerous, but we can learn from it. We can see where our trust on certain matters really is. We can learn what not to do. We can see that we need to change course in this area or that area. And we can do so logically and calmly, which that's a struggle for us all right now because emotions are raw. I mean, I understand that. And we can be holy. We can separate from many of those things and say, no more, I'm done. From this point, I'm done. I'm taking a different route. But what they want you to do is just be afraid, look to them for salvation. Be fearful, look to them for salvation. Be afraid, look to them for salvation. That's the goal. And you can see how that can be easily shifted when you're looking to a political, religious, worldly man figure. They can hand all that delegation over to, say, an antichrist one day as they brain train the majority. It's time that we, if maybe, pull back a lot so that we can get a bigger picture of things. Pay attention, think, turn off a few things for a while. Process data. And remember, God is our refuge and strength. Not big business, not big pharmacy, not CNN, not Facebook, or any of these other sources. He's a very present help in trouble. Therefore, we will not fear, though the mountains be removed, and though the mountains be carried away into the midst of the sea. If you have put your faith, your trust, your reliance upon Jesus Christ and Him alone, you are reborn, you're His child. He is a very present help. A very present help. He's with you. He's with us all. And He wants us to always know that. You know, Psalm 46, 1 and 2 is what I read you. Verse 8 or verse 10 says, be still and know that I am God. It is so easy for even believers to forget the promises of God. All of Israel did, or the majority. They took their minds off of God. They forgot God. They forgot what He said. And in their hearts, they turned back to Egypt. Psalm 106, 21 says, they forgot God, their Savior, which He had done great things. Which He had done great things in Egypt. Just that quickly they forgot. That's why they want your mind. That's why sow it loud enough, long enough, often enough. Pound that idea into your head to distract you from remembering this earth is not your home. You are just passing through. Jesus Christ will never leave you, never forsake you, and is always with you. They want you to forget that because you can. Your mind can be overwhelmed and flooded with many things to include fear, and you can forget that a lot easier than you may want to admit to yourself. Question any and everything that comes out of these people's mouth, because there's a ton of money being made. There's a ton of control being granted to these people. The same people who sit in the third line as the greatest causes of death, a cause that kills people, and that's medical error. These are the people everyone's turning to. I think there's some logic absent. I think there's some eyes that are shut to what is literally in front of their nose. And I pray it's not us. But I just want everyone to start thinking critically. And the best thing the devil wants you to do, or one of the things that he might, I should say, want you to do, is panic and be afraid. Be distracted so you too forget the promises of God, and for you to change course in the wrong direction. And I'm going to close with this thought. Though this is the time we live in, and though it has its own evils, and for us they're present, they're real, they're here. They've always been here for every culture, every nation since the fall of man. But we have a reprieve right now, a little bit of a pocket to give us time to think ahead. Because some hard choices appear to be on the horizon. They're talking about many things to try and manipulate that control and power, excluding benefits from those that receive them if they will not comply. You see, that shows you their motive is not to help you, it's to control you. And for you Americans out there, God is your greatest authority. Culturally, and in this nation, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, whether, I don't even know if you've read it. Many people don't even read it anymore. Bring to light so much. They had no idea of kicking God out of government. They relied upon God for government, for the future of this nation. That's why they overthrew a wicked, tyrannical government prior to ours being established. Let me just read you a little bit. When in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that it should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Those rights are to worship your God. Speak of your God. Speak freely, live free, and pursue happiness, and to allow others to do so as well. That's a very different government from what we live under now. The government back then would not have allowed the nonsense that we see today. But as a Christian, you have rights in this country. You have commandments from God. You have freedoms gifted to you from God. The greatest freedoms that you'll begin to find and understand, and the most important, is going to be in God's Word, because He is the ultimate authority, far and above all human government. John 8:31 and 32 says, Then said Jesus to the Jews which believed on Him. So these had already believed. If you continue in my word, then are you my disciples indeed, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. It's that truth that brings freedom. Because all of these lies and propaganda and manipulation, the main purpose is to take away your freedoms, freedom of thought, much less action, and to control you and bring you into bondage. So I have no idea what I'm going to title this, because this was just some different thoughts that popped off in my head today. But we are in the midst of wolves, and we need to be wise in this day and age that we live in. We need to process data, facts, truth. And don't suppress your brain and your mind and your intuition and what you see clearly before your face, just because some media outlet somewhere, all of which they are owned by multi-billion-dollar heathen, that would just be foolish. So be careful out there. Pray one for another. Keep your eyes on God, because this world will instill nothing but fear, disappointment into your very core. Every time you put trust in this world and take your eyes off God, it brings disappointment. Keep your eyes focused on Jesus, what He did, what He's promised, what your future is, regardless of how this pans out in our very, very short lives. And maybe tonight, sometime, or today, whenever you hear this, you can cut everything off, maybe go sit out on your porch or your balcony or somewhere quiet. Look to the heavens. Maybe lift up holy hands. Don't be ashamed to do that. And just be still and know that He is God. Till next time, take care and God bless.